Thanks so much for joining us. So excited y'all hopped on this call with us to talk about our clinical cohort. So we're going to get started in about 3 minutes. Okay, y'all, so actually I want to make sure we get some time to do introductions, so let's go ahead and get started now. But welcome to our movement lawyering webinar. So excited to be talking about our semester together and sharing our work with people who are members and allies of Law for Black Lives. And so I'll just start out with just going over the agenda, then we can hop right in. So just want to do a quick welcome, walk us through some introductions, and then we'll have our land co-op group discuss their work. And then our reparations group will discuss the work they've done together. And then the Bell group will wrap us up. And then we'll end with some closing announcements, hoping that works for everybody. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Erica. I'm with Law for Black Lives. Excited to be on staff. And Law for Black Lives is a group of legal workers, organizers, law students who are committed to serving movement. And we do that through, one of the ways we do that is through our clinical cohort. And so just a clinical cohort, many of you are involved in it, just we'll quickly overview that, but the clinical cohort is made up of clinics and our community and movement partners who are working together to provide resources for ongoing policy campaigns and community building work. And so this is the second semester of our clinical cohort. We launched in the spring of 2018, and we're really excited to be ending our semester this year and then going into 2019 in the spring to continue the work with many of you and the rest of our partners. Right, so let's get into some introductions. I expected the call to be a little smaller, but I still want to just see who's on the phone. So if folks could just say your name, pronouns, and then just what org or clinic you're with. And we can start with Buffalo.
Great, okay, now we're unmuted. All right, so Charles?
My name is Charles. I'm here from the University at Buffalo Health Justice Clinic. And
I'm Danielle Pelfrey Duryea. I direct the Health Justice Clinic here. And I just want to say thanks to Erica and Marbury for organizing an amazing semester. And we're really grateful to be part of it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, we can go to Lauren.
Hey, I'm Lauren. I'm from the Hofstra Law School Community and Economic Development Clinic. Pronouns are he and she. Oh, just kidding, she and her.
Good. Hey everybody, this is Jade. My pronouns are she or they. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I work with Southerners on New Ground or Song. But right now I'm in Erica's living room, Memphis. It's the best. And I can pass it to Chris Tittle. Hello, Chris.
Hello, thank you. My name is Chris, he and him, and I'm actually based in Charleston, South Carolina. But I'm with a group called the Sustainable Economies Law Center, which is based in Oakland, California, where I lived for a long time. And yeah, I'm mostly working on housing and farmland. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Do you want to pass it to someone?
Oh, yes, thank you. I'll pass it to Joy.
Hi, I'm Joy. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm with the University of Maryland Gender Violence Clinic, and I've been doing work on reparations.
Thank you so much, Joy. And also, Thank you. So if the clinical students could just name like what clinic you're with and also which project you've been working on, that would be super dope. So we can pass it to Anneke.
Hey y'all, my name's Annika. I use they, them pronouns, and have been working with the Harvard Clinic I actually don't know what the name of the clinic is, but I have been working on community land trust research, and I am currently in Oakland.
Thank you, Annika. Do you want to pass it to somebody?
Yes. Who is Tamara?
Thank you, Annika. Hi, everyone. I'm Tamara Jones. I'm Executive Director of SAFON, the Southeastern African American Farmers Organic Network. We're not just organic, actually. We're anything ecologically sustainable in production and food. We are a member of the Black Land and Power Coalition and a member of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. And we are looking at creating a community land trust that would anchor a national network from where we're located here in the Southeast. And with that, why don't I kick it to Noah?
Thanks, Tamara. I use all pronouns. No, I work with SAFON as well, kind of spearheading some of the work around the creation of the land trust and work around Black land loss in our network. I think, yeah. Let me pass it to, oh yeah, and we're located in Atlanta. Let me pass it to Kyla.
Yeah, that was right. Thanks. My name is Kyla Hartsfield. How y'all doing? I'm coming from Durham, and I'm the North Carolina statewide organizer with Southerners on New Ground, aka SONG. And we have an End Money Bill campaign. And I can pass it to, have you went, Dara?
I have not, and you said my name right. Hi, everybody. Dara Cooper, she, her, hers. I'm based in Atlanta, also with the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. Super excited to see y'all's beautiful and brilliant faces. I think that was all the prompts. Is that right, Erica? Okay, dope.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I'll kick it to, I thought I saw Clark's name on here. Clark Arrington, you on the line?
I'm here. How you doing?
Hey, Clark Arrington.
Can I get the video? Yeah, there's the video. Hi, my name is Clark Arrington. I'm an attorney. Right. I'm general counsel with a group called the Working World. We basically finance worker-owned businesses, cooperatives, and I've been a technical assistance advisor to the Black Land and Power Coalition and Northeast Farmers of Color, Nature's Garden for Victory and Peace. You know, I'm really excited to be a part of this young, emerging group of progressive activist lawyers.
Thank you, Clark. Can you pass it to somebody? We'll go with Murph.
Hi, I'm Murph. I'm the executive director at Columbia Legal Services in Seattle, Washington. We're a legal advocacy organization that works to end mass incarceration and end the broken immigration system and address the harms of both of those systems and they and theirs.
Thank you so much. We'll pass it to Michael.
Hey, I'm Michael Haber. I run the Community Economic Development Clinic at Hofstra Law School. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'll pass it to Kimberly.
Hey everyone, my name is Kimberly Gonzalez. I'm the operations director with Law for Black Lives and your tech assistant for today's call. She, her, hers, and pronouns, and I'm coming to you all from Central Florida. And I will kick it over to Nzinga. Or maybe not. Anaya?
Hi everyone, my name is Anaya. I'm from Loyola University, New Orleans College of Law. I'm a 3L and my pronouns are she and they. I guess I can pass it to Lauren. Have you went? Oh, never mind. Okay. Oh God, Joy? No? Okay. I have no idea who else to go to.
So there are two Murphs. So,
okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just helping you out because I can kind of see who's gone yet, who hasn't gone yet. So one of the other Murph, do you want to go?
Hi, my name is Alex Bergstrom. I work with Murph, actual Murph at Columbia Legal Services, doing some of our institutions work here. And I followed a link that she sent me, which I guess is why it says her name on here instead of mine. Sorry, their name. But my name is Alex Bergstrom. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Let's see who hasn't gone. Eric. All right. And then also, friends, if you're on the phone, to get off of mute, you can just press *6. But while Eric is doing that, we can go to Nicholas. Okay, well, while we wait for Nicholas, we can go to, we can see who's on the phone. So there is a 336 number. And to take yourself off of mute, again, press *6.
I think I got it done. So this is Nzinga. Sorry, Kimberly. I'm just listening in. I'm an attorney in DC, and I'm with Law for Black Lives DC.
Thank you so much, Nzinga. Let's see.
Hi, this is Nicholas, he, him. I'm from University of Texas School of Law. Yeah, and I've been working with people from Virginia.
Thank you. Okay, who else hasn't gone yet, y'all? If you haven't gone, speak up, friends.
My name's Amanda. Pronouns are she, her, and I'm a 2L at the University of St. Thomas in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Thank you. And which clinic, which topic have you been working on?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the call, so I'm new to this. This is my first conference call.
Okay, well, that's fine. Thank you so much for joining us. Just wanted to, if you were working on a specific topic, bail, reparations, or land. If your clinic was working on one of them. Has your clinic been working on one of those three topics, bail, reparations, or land?
No.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. All right, beautiful. Has anybody else not gone?
Hi. Hey, I'm Kamardeep Singh. I'm with the International Action Network for Gender Equity in Law. I'm in Oakland, and I go by she, her.
Thank you so much. All right, so friends on the phone, 646 number. All right, we have an 808 number. And then again, to get off mute, just press *6.
Hey, this is Jerome with UDC. I'm a clinical instructor. He, him, his. It's good to be with you all again.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jerome. Okay. Are we missing anybody else? Alrighty, y'all. So thanks again for joining us. And so for folks who are like new to the call and haven't been a part of our cohort, this past semester we covered 2 topics: land, bail, and reparations. And so we're going to start off with our land working group. And we'll hear from first the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. And so they'll explain a little bit. And what we've asked each organization or organizer to do is answer a couple of questions. And so I'll let you know what questions we're asking folks to answer before we jump in. And so we've asked the organizers to talk about what prompted the research questions they submitted to us this semester, talk a bit about if this is for a campaign or a community building project, how they plan to use the research in service to the campaign or community building project. And then we asked each clinic who will be speaking tonight to explain the research questions they answered this semester and provide any relevant background information, and then explain their research process. And then just explain or talk a bit about if there's anything significant that they've learned while completing the research. And just to let folks know, what we did is we reached out to our movement partners last year, and we asked them if there was something they needed to work on. And so some of our partners, the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, Southern is on New Ground, the National Bailout Collective, and the Movement for Black Lives Policy Table came back to us and they said, hey, these are our questions that we need help with while engaging in this campaign or this community building project. And so we reached out to clinics, asked them to complete a form, and had discussions with them around what topics they would like to dive into. And so we've been working with each other over the past semester, and some of us since January of this year, to dig in and answer these questions. So like extremely excited and grateful for all the work that both the law students, clinical professors, our community partners have done together. And I think this is beautiful work and very powerful. And so I'll pass it to our friends at the National Black Food and Justice Alliance to spend about 5 to 7 minutes just talking about their work and answering those questions for us.
Okay, great. I'm assuming that's me, but Noah and Tamara and Clark have been the lead in this particular terrain, and actually Katrina Baxter is not here. But I'll share a little bit of background about the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, if it's okay to our SAFON comrades, and Clark to chime in. If that's okay, if y'all can give me a head nod. Okay, dope. So the National Black Food and Justice Alliance is an alliance of about 20, actually going to 25, Black-led organizations and institutions that are committed to agency and organizing around our food system, right? And at the heart of our food system and making sure that we have a strong, secure food system that is sustainable and fair and just, and particularly looking at the means for Black communities to not only have healthier access, but actually have a deeper agency within the food system. At the heart of that is land that we see, and at the heart of any work and thinking around what our social movements should be concentrating on, and which we're deeply connected to, right, is deeply rooted in social movements. But the heart of this work for us is around land, ultimately land reform work, but also just understanding how our communities have been massively displaced in both urban and rural settings, and particularly when we're thinking about the means of production for our farmers and communities to be able to feed ourselves. Land is at the heart of a lot of this. And so many of our anchor institutions, including groups like Land Loss Prevention Project, again, SAFON, Southeastern African American Farmers Organic Network that we're going to hear from, and many other of our our member organizations and our anchor institutions have identified that we can't get very far around food sustainability, around food sovereignty, without thinking about land justice in this country, right? And so we are also on the leadership team with the Movement for Black Lives, obviously in partnership with the Law for Black Lives, where this project came about, and last year engaged in some really great conversations around what, and research that the law clinics did last year around helping us to explore legal mechanisms to help protect and retain land that our communities could be able to hold and have access to on a national, regional, and local level. And so I'll stop there in terms of the frame for this, and hopefully that's enough. Tamara and Noah, y'all can give me a nod if y'all want to jump in here. And then Clark.
Yeah, I can jump in. Thanks, Dara, for that. That was really helpful. So as a member of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, our needs are kind of really deeply interconnected to everything. And that was kind of a broad overview, but for us specifically, we are an organization of mostly elder landowners and farmers in the Southeast, and that's the population that we serve and work with. And specifically, one of the biggest challenges, it's been faced for decades, but right now it's coming to a head, is the lack of intergenerational land transfer and opportunities for it. And we believe that a community land trust is a very viable option for being able to retain land that is potentially going to be lost within our network and outside of our network as well. So that's really one of the pieces that the Villanova students worked on was really pertinent to us, which was around Black farmers placing their land into a community land trust and kind of like ironing out specific pieces in that process. And then also the effect of what's called air property on that. So that's kind of like honing in a little sharper into like, for our context. I don't know if you want to add anything, Tamara.
Yeah, thanks, Dara. No, that was great. I guess my little 2 cents would be kind of just pointing out that the community land trust in this country was formed in southern Georgia, in rural ag communities. The first community land trust was created by New Communities, Inc., Shirley Sherrod and Charles Sherrod, as a way to try to save and give secure housing to Black sharecroppers and rural farmers that were being pushed off the land. And something that it's kind of historically useful is that their idea for creating that particular structure actually came out of Israel, of all places, when they had gone and visited the kibbutzes and the moshavs in Israel, which were both cooperative structures. And the reason I mention that is because part of what we're really hoping to get from this exercise with you is what the Sherrods did, is they went to this place, they saw a structure, and then they brought it back to a new place and creatively retooled it to meet the needs that we had. And part of what we are hoping to really accomplish is to use the law as a tool, not just to recreate what already is, but as a tool to serve our vision and our purpose and our values. And so part of what I think we see as most exciting about this project is not just writing a paper on this is what a CLT is and how it's been done, but to take seriously the vision that we're laying out, that what we're trying to do with this land that's a little different, and then thinking about how do we use the law to realize that vision and put it to work for the collective. So I really wanted to just kind of throw that into the mix as well. And with that, I'll kick it to Clark. And Clark, you might want to just say a little bit about your experience setting up these structures.
Yeah, I think you guys have covered it. I mean, I think what's most important is what you just said about using the law to create institutions that address our particular needs. And let's not forget that, New Communities was not set up as a community land trust. It was set up as a land trust for farmers who had been exploited and dehumanized as a result of the civil rights movement. Ultimately, the movement evolved, the land trust movement evolved into community land trusts, but that's another story, and that's where I think we are now. This is a brand new day, and I think we're very fortunate to have these energetic students and professors helping us figuring out how we can utilize the law to address our interests in the 21st century. So, yeah, I'm very comfortable. And whoever is next should proceed. But I think we've covered it.
Great. Also, sorry, I think Jerome is on too. He's been working on this.
Yeah, Jerome is there.
Okay. I didn't want to leave him out.
And Jerome, to take yourself off of mute is just *6.
Jerome, did you want to add?
This is Jerome.
Okay, beautiful.
No, I don't have anything to contribute other than that. Everyone covered it.
Yeah. Thank y'all so much for explaining that. We appreciate your work. And so what we'll do is kick it off to the clinics who have worked on, the clinical students who have worked on this project over the past semester. And so if you could just answer the question in like 2 to 3 minutes. And I just want to name that the clinics you'll hear from are Harvard, Buffalo, and Loyola out of New Orleans. But there were like quite a few clinics who also worked on this project with us. And some of them, many of the students couldn't make it because this is final exam season. So just want to shout out to them, but grateful for their work. And so I'll kick it to Buffalo.
Okay. All right, so just really quickly again, my name is Charles, and this is my professor, Pelfrey Duryea, and we're from Buffalo, the Health Justice Clinic. Just quickly about us, we do 2 sort of different things. We do medical legal partnership on one hand, and then we do sort of other projects such as this, and we've just been really grateful to be involved and to be working with you guys this semester. So thank you very much. Just moving quickly into our own research, thank you to our partners who covered sort of the background, I guess, of what's going on with community land trusts, and especially I think Noah touched on the problem of heirs property and the idea of land sort of being lost over generations. A lot of land was acquired by African Americans in the beginning of the 20th century, end of the 19th century, and due to the land passing down from generation to generation, usually people passing away without a will, a lot of that land has been lost. And so we identified that as one of the key issues we were trying to address with our research. But particular questions that we addressed were the opportunities and considerations for designing a national Black community land trust with regional chapters. So basically the considerations that would go into building this sort of broad national coalition of community land trusts. And then we also, as a second part, explored national policies, legislation, and sources of funding that could be used for such a national organization or for just individual community land trusts. So one of the key components we felt, we identified some goals for what we think would be best for the national organization. We would envision it as an organization that sort of provides a loose coalition of community land trusts around the country, rather than a national organization that sort of holds land. The national organization would provide funding, it would provide education, other resources for CLTs. Obviously, one of the goals would be to prevent the loss of Black-owned farmland. And also, we envision the national organization would engage in research. One particular thing we identified was that it could sort of do research into maybe what lands are susceptible to being lost through the problem of heirs property, and what lands are susceptible to being lost in that way. And so doing work to sort of make sure that that doesn't happen, work with community leaders, maybe to convince people who own land to put their land into a community land trust and sort of preserve land that way. We identified a particular legal problem where there's a law called the Statute of Uses, which can sort of it can make it so that the purpose of the community land trust is sort of becomes null and void. Essentially, the trust is sort of destroyed, and the beneficiaries of the trust, the people who live on the land, regain legal ownership, and then the problem of heirs property is just we get back to square one. So we identified some issues with that and talked about how there's sort of different ways around that rule so that you can still form community land trusts in spite of that rule. Another thing we went into was sponsorship for CLTs. A sponsor is an entity that provides the impetus for a new CLT and plays a leading role in getting it organized. They can be sponsored by grassroots activists, public officials, private employers, or nonprofit organizations. And we sort of, through our research, determined that nonprofit organizations might be the best way to go, just because that option seems to provide a lot of flexibility. And like going off of what Tamara said earlier about sort of suiting what taking the law and suiting it to your own mission, it seems like the flexibility with the nonprofit sponsorship, it would be the way to go forward with that. Another thing we looked at was funding sources. There's a lot of potential funding sources. We came up with a list of just a few. Grounded Solutions Network has a community land trust accelerator program. There are grants from the EPA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture also provides grants, and that's certainly a non-exhaustive list. There's many more, but that's just sort of where we focused on. And that about sums it up for us.
Thank you so much, Charles. We appreciate that. Again, thank you for your work. And so now I'll pass it to Anneke to talk a bit about the work they've done.
Hey, y'all. It's the Transactional Law Clinic. That's the name of the clinic. Carlos, who's not here today, was my clinical supervisor for this. And we were responding to two prongs of a single question, one of which was, how can CLTs address problems facing Black communities related to land? And the other part of it was, how can CLTs address problems facing Black communities related to valuable resources and production capacity? I'm at Harvard. I'm sorry. Sorry about that, Tamara. And everybody, because I just didn't say it. And so because on the first question, we're actually still working through how to drill down on like specific strategies that are helpful to addressing the problems facing the Black community related to land specifically, because there are two elements to retaining, to like growing the base of land. One is retaining existing land, and the other is getting additional land. And so we're focusing on the retention of land, but there are a number of different tools that we can look through. And so one of the tools that we're still researching, based on because we were a little unsure of which direction we should go, and so we were asking a lot of questions, is the model that exists with an organization called COHIF in Boston. And that's an organization that is supportive of like distressed owners of land and like supports like existing owners to retain the land that they already have. And then also there's foreclosure assistance. And so I think that's the research that we're working on right now. Should, some kind of emergency around land ownership or like land stewardship and retention come up. As to the second question, we were able to find a good amount of information about valuable resources and production capacity. There's an organization also in Massachusetts called UFI, which released a very long report and which talked about the organizational structures and practices that best allow that organization to govern, manage, and steward the land in a way that furthers its mission. And it talks a lot about like board, staff, and farmer relationships, and then also identified like some best practices. about maintaining a CLT for agricultural purposes, and those were developing stewardship and management practices, engaging neighborhood residents, developing land agreements, structuring governance and division, and also around division of responsibilities, and then also networking with other CLTs. And they also have this kind of like a tool for creating like a CLT like values compass, and a number of different case studies with different CLTs across the country that have different missions that we could like pick and choose from based on our, you know, like organizing partners, based on like what so they can pick and choose some of these tools that in a way that would be like most useful to what each like discrete land trust parcel or organization would like to use. So I hope that was clear. But so we're still working through some parts of that, but we did learn a lot of really cool things just about how all of these different agricultural like organizations and like groups of folks are using this tool of community land trust, which was originally for like developing housing, are using that tool to create space for farmland and, you know, and community space and stewardship in a way that is like really beautiful. So that's about where we are right now.
Thank you so much, Anneke. It's beautiful. So we'll pass it to Anaya to talk about the work that her clinic has been doing this semester.
Okay. Hey everyone. First, thanks to MBFJA and L4BL for such a rewarding experience. We had 2 questions this semester. So first, we looked at how LLCs work as subsidiaries and if it would be possible to have the community land trust function as an LLC subsidiary. That was a question that I worked on. Someone else in my clinic, she worked on 501c3. I'm not really knowledgeable about that, but I'll try to kind of explain it as best as I can. So first with LLCs, we kind of went into formation. And so the main thing that we found was that whatever state the LLC is incorporated in, like that's the law that will govern the LLC, no matter where the members of the LLC may be. And so we thought that that would be really helpful to the different organizations because, you know, there may be a lot of different people working in the land trust from around the country. And so, you know, thankfully you won't have to worry about like conflict of laws or, you know, different laws applying, you know, so it's just going to be the law where the LLC is formed. And there's a lot of flexibility unless, you know, it's a decision that's made in bad faith or it violates the operating agreement of the LLC. You know, courts generally, they're just gonna leave it alone. So aside from personal liability and, you know, really good tax treatment, there really isn't, you know, any limits on how the LLC can be formed. There's a lot of flexibility. So yeah, basically LLCs, they basically can function as vehicles, like kind of like a subset of an organization. It kind of can be like a little project of that organization. So it's really perfect for setting up a community land trust. Really kind of the only requirements is that it has to, you know, comply with certain formalities and how it's set up, and it has to be adequately capitalized. So it should be funded. And the last really kind of important thing with the subsidiary LLC is that the parent corporation has to maintain a separate identity from the subsidiary. So the subsidiary and the parent corporation, like they can basically like have the same purpose, But, courts need to be able to kind of differentiate between the parent corporation and the subsidiary. So moving on to 501c2s, one of the questions that we had was, what was the relationship between 501c3s and 501c2s? And so the main thing that we found was that the 501c2 has to give the income over to the 501c3. And so the 501c3 also has to have control over the 501c2. So they hold title to the land, they collect the income, and then they give the income to the 501c3. The 501c2 itself cannot generate income. And it also can't do any type of business outside of the things I just mentioned. So holding the land, collecting income, and then handing it over to the 501c3. If it does, do any type of, business activity, then its status can actually be revoked. So that's something to watch out for. So in sum, the advantages that we found with the 501c2 was that there's limited liability. There's a lot of flexibility. There's increased borrowing power. The accounting is a little bit more simple, and there aren't any issues with 501c3 state law compliance because it's governed by federal law. And also there's just greater flexibility. So yeah, I hope that helps, and thanks again.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate your work. So that was the group that worked on the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. So I'll just transition us into the group that worked on the Picture the Homeless question. And so the community partner we're working with from Picture the Homeless is actually on a well-deserved vacation right now, so we couldn't make the call. So I'll just briefly go over who they are and kind of the work that they've been doing. And so Picture the Homeless is a nonprofit based-building organization in New York City, and their strategies include grassroots organizing, direct action, educating people experiencing homelessness about their rights. And so they recently, along with a couple of other groups in New York City, won a victory establishing affordable housing via community land trust. And so, however, Picture the Homeless had this question or was unsure about whether their members, who are people who are experiencing homelessness, will have access to some of those affordable housing. And so they asked the question, or rather recognize that the Department of Housing, Preservation, Development currently use a lottery system to determine who would be eligible for new units. And so the lottery system basically made it inaccessible to the communities and the people they serve because it requires a person to show their income and address, which is difficult or impossible for, again, people experiencing homelessness who they are in community and work with. And so as a result, they're asking when they know that people will be excluded from this new community land trust model that they fought so hard to make happen. And so they asked the question if there was any policy recommendations that could be made or interventions that could be made, and then if litigation, a litigation count could also work. And so we worked with Hasfra to actually answer that question. And so I'll pass it to Mike and his students to walk us through the work that they've done this semester.
I'll leave it to Lauren.
Hi. Okay, so like Erica said, our question was to find any viable creative litigation options or policy arguments that would challenge the current lottery process. So we kind of tried to narrow it down a little bit by attacking specific smaller questions that could kind of answer that bigger question. So we looked at relevant statutes, and we looked at like the Fair Housing Act and the TILL program, the Tenant Interim Purchase Program, and we looked at the constitutional right to shelter for New York to kind of help us answer that. So I guess I will start with standing is relevant, obviously. So standing is established by showing that the complainant suffered an injury in fact that was actual or imminent, the injury is fairly traceable to the action, and it's likely to be redressed by a favorable outcome. The court is also going to consider the sequence of events that led up to the action, if there was any type of departure from normal procedure, and historical background. So Picture the Homeless could bring an action on behalf of its members by showing that their members would have standing in their own right based off of those elements, and that Picture the Homeless, their goal is to protect these members and that it's germane to the organization's purpose. So after standings shown, we looked at Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination based on race, color, national origin, and all programs by HUD. So the standing elements are different. If Picture the Homeless went this route, a complainant must show that the defendant received federal financial assistance, that the plaintiff was the intended beneficiary of the assistance, and that the defendant, which would be the city in this case, discriminated against the plaintiff based on race, color, origin in connection with the program. So Picture the Homeless could also try and use the Fair Housing Act. This would look like discussing disparate impact or intent, and facially neutral decisions that can cause greater adverse impact. And Picture the Homeless would be able to do this by showing that the city's use of the lottery system results in racial discrimination of its members, or they could use a mixed motive tactic where they would show that the city uses both legitimate and illegitimate considerations when making their decisions. So this could also be brought under the New York City human rights law. So Picture the Homeless definitely does have a few options when looking at the statutes. Then we focused on the TILL program. And although TILL and what Picture the Homeless is trying to is a bit different, the facts are different from what we understand, it kind of could be used as a policy argument. So TILL assists organized tenant associations in the city-owned buildings to develop self-sufficient low-income co-ops. And what happens is the tenant associations enter into the lease with the city for the building, and then TILL provides training to the tenant associations on how to manage the building. And then the main thing is that the tenants are able to purchase these apartments for only $250. From what we understand, Picture the Homeless was initially told that their members would be able to purchase these apartments for $250. And then out of nowhere, the city decided to change the purchase price to $2,500, which is obviously a lot more. And for extremely low income individuals, probably they can't afford to pay $200 or $2,500 for an apartment. So I had looked at the NEP program, which is a neighborhood entrepreneurs program. And in this program, the city had allowed these entrepreneurs who didn't necessarily need such great financial assistance to purchase apartments, they allowed them to purchase apartments for only $1. And even though the details are much different, Picture the Homeless could try and persuade the city or HUD to say, hey, like, you allowed this once before, our members really would benefit by only paying $1. So maybe we could do this again. So that's definitely more of a policy argument. It probably wouldn't be very persuasive in court and probably wouldn't have much of an argument there, but to try and persuade the city, that could definitely help. And then there also could be a case for detrimental reliance, depending on the extent to which a promise was made to picture the homeless regarding the purchase price for the apartments. We weren't sure how concrete the promise or the conversation was. We do know that obviously they were told $250 and then it came to $2,500, but we weren't sure how much of really a promise there was there. So depending on that, there could be an argument there for detrimental reliance. And then lastly, we looked at the constitutional right to shelter that's in the New York State Constitution. Definitely there is that right to shelter there. We looked at the Callahan v. Carey line of cases, which kind of establishes that there is a right to shelter. However, it's not really guaranteed, decent housing. It's just kind of a roof over your head. So it probably wouldn't work to picture the homeless's advantage to use this type of argument because it really just guarantees a minimal right to shelter, which isn't necessarily the goal. So that's kind of what we found throughout the semester, and definitely we learned a lot about housing that we didn't already know. I know that neither of us really did that much work with housing beforehand, so it was definitely a great experience.
Thank you so much, Lauren. We appreciate your work, and thank you for that summary. So before we wrap up the land co-op work, I just want to shout out a couple of the folks who couldn't be on the call. We also worked with the Detroit Justice Project to answer questions around support for people, returning citizens. Also, they asked for us to look into some work around forming an eco-village. And then another question around making recommendations to around the Detroit Community Benefits Ordinance that just recently passed, and what revisions could be made there. And so some of the law schools the law clinics who couldn't be on here, want to shout out Villanova School of Law, UDC School of Law, Columbia Law School, and John Marshall School of Law. And just super grateful for their work. Again, folks are in exam season, so also grateful for the folks who could be on the call. So I'll move us into the reparations working group, and so grateful for their work. And so the folks from the Movement for Black Lives Policy Table also couldn't be on this call. And shout out to Marbury, who's holding that and who also has been a huge part of this cohort. She's in Kenya right now, so she couldn't be on. So I'll just walk us through the Movement for Black Lives Policy Table and their question around reparations. So for folks who don't know, the Movement for Black Lives Policy Table is a formation of over 70 Black-centered groups from across the country. It was formed in 2015 after the aftermath of the killings of Freddie Gray, Michael Brown, Tanisha Anderson, Rikia Boyd, and others. The table engages in collective political struggle, seeks alignment, and provides policy support to groups throughout the country. And one of the priority areas identified by the policy table is reparations. And so that working group is currently working on developing a toolkit for reparations. And the research conducted by this program will be used in a case study in the toolkit highlighting the gender dynamics of reparations. And so we are grateful, both folks in the policy table and us at Law for Black Lives are grateful for the work that the University of Maryland Law School has been doing to answer that question, to help in developing the toolkit. So I'll pass it to Joya to talk, I'm sorry, Joy, my friend's name is Joya. I'll pass it to Joy to talk a bit about the work that your clinic has done. Oh, we can't hear you. No, let's see. If you're on the phone, I think press *6, but no, we can't hear you.
Maybe she could try taking off the headphones and unplugging it.
Now?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so I'm Joy from the University of Maryland Gender Violence Clinic, and I was looking at doing a case study on the reparations for sterilization movement in North Carolina that just ended in 2013, sort of. Well, basically, they just got payment this year, but it was just a long period of time when they were trying to get reparations for sterilization. So we were looking at why they were seeking reparations, going into the historical context, as well as looking at tracking the movement for reparations that happened in North Carolina. So it was going through who the organizers were, what the historical context in the present day was, what the framing that they used was, and just really trying to see what happened so that we can use it as a model for successful reparations campaigns in the future. So when I looked back at what happened, there was a eugenics movement in North Carolina and throughout the country, but North Carolina was the worst in the US. It just finished in the 70s, where they were forcefully sterilizing people who were on welfare, and it would disproportionately during the 60s and 70s affected Black women on welfare who were oftentimes sterilized just because they were promiscuous and had babies out of wedlock. So then the welfare agencies would then come to them and force them to get sterilized. Otherwise, they would lose their welfare benefits. And there had been lawsuits in the 70s trying to get $1 million for a couple of the victims who had sued, but they did not succeed. And this case sort of fell to the background. Nobody remembered it, and then it was rediscovered in 2002. And what happened was there was a really, really long, like more than 20 articles written by the Winston-Salem Journal in North Carolina about the eugenics program, exposing it, and that sort of launched the eugenics movement, eugenics reparations movement in 2002. So then Larry Womble, who was a representative in the North Carolina House of Representatives, took up this cause and tried to get reparations from the get-go. But it wasn't until 2012 when it really picked up. There was a shift from a Democratic legislature to Republicans. They had Republicans in the House, in the General Assembly, and in the governor's office, and that's sort of why they were able to get reparations after 10 years of struggling, since they were able to pass through a budget that their party had agreed on and get the reparations. So in the end, they gave $10 million to about 200 victims, which was almost $45,000 per person. And the reason that they were able to do that is they were able to frame it as genocide of these Black babies who were never able to come, instead of framing it as what it really was, which was just denying the reproductive rights of Black women. So they were able to get the Republicans on board, and once they did that, they were able to push the bill through in 2013. So that is a 35-page paper in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for that. And I would appreciate, so grateful for your work, and just make, I think, one intervention, and it's the question around like thinking about the state's role in like determining that Black women were not we should be sterilized because of this idea of promiscuity and having babies, and so like putting the onus on the state and recognizing that the state was deeply at fault for that and not wanting to criminalize like Black women. But grateful for your work, and so thank you for continuing to dive in and deepen and dig into that question. And so that is our reparations work. And so we want to move into the conversation around bail, and so excited to talk to our friends at Song and the National Bailout Collective about the bail work that we have been doing together the past year. And so I'll kick it to Jade to start us off.
Right on. I am learning a lot, just to say off the bat. Me and Kyla are texting each other like, what in the hell? But yeah, real quick, thanks y'all for having us on and for all your work on these like crucial issues. We at Southerners on New Ground have been working for the last couple of years around a regional demand across the Southeast to end money bail and pretrial detention. And we've been blessed to be working closely with our comrades at the National Bailout Collective and Law for Black Lives in that work through the National Black Mamas Bailout, Black August bailouts, and much more. The bailouts, actions that some of you may have heard of, we saw as a tactic to draw attention to the crisis of cash bail, particularly in Black communities in the Southeast where Song organizes. yeah, I guess I should say, because everyone else did, SONG is a 25-year-old LGBTQ liberation organization founded in the Southeast to do racial and economic justice work, primarily with LGBTQ, Black, immigrant, poor, and working class Southerners. And we've taken on this demand and have launched from the bailouts 5 campaigns across the Southeast. So I'll just talk broadly about kind of our campaign work, and then I think it would be great, Kyla, if you could dig into some of the specifics in Durham. But yeah, I think one of the big themes of the questions that we needed was just to help us kind of untangle and understand how the pretrial detention system is working, both at the local level. Most of our chapters are organized in different municipalities, but also the role of the state, and how potential demands that we are trying to move through local campaigns might be like blocked, if you will, by state forces and state legislation. And one of the other things we were really trying to get under is the role of magistrates, local magistrates, and judges in determining bail, who basically we can put pressure on the local and state levels around our demands, and trying to get kind of the veil pulled off of these different risk assessment tools that we're seeing local cities and towns and whole states put in place to determine who is eligible for pretrial freedom and who has to stay in the cage. So those are just kind of some of the questions we're looking for in a nutshell. And we have campaigns moving and developing in Richmond, Virginia, Durham, North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, Nashville, Tennessee, and Birmingham, Alabama. So we are also kind of looking for memos that would break down the differences between those jurisdictions. But Kyla, maybe you could tell us a little bit about Durham.
Thanks, Jade. You put everything so beautifully. Specifically in Durham, we are currently in the demand development after we've had a judicial candidate forum before this current election. So we had 6 judges come and basically talk about how their relation to bail, how they're going to change bail, and et cetera. And then we had a presentation at a North Carolina Courts Commission meeting. A courts commission is basically a group of people, judges, legislators, public defenders, and magistrates who give recommendations to the General Assembly. And shout out to Erica for helping us come up with the presentation. It was a really great presentation, and they're going to give a recommendation on money bail in North Carolina next year. We needed the research because in the demand development phase that we're in now, we kept coming with questions that we didn't know the answer to. Some questions like how many beds have to be filled to keep a jail open, and how many people are in pretrial detention in Durham County just because they're not able to afford bail, and what divestment programs in Durham County, and et cetera, et cetera. And when we put it into the air that we needed research, thankfully Jade, Erica hit me up and had researchers for us. So I'm greatly appreciative. And I think that's it. I think that's all I have to say. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much, Song Crew. So much love to y'all. Shout out to Song. So we'll go, just want to hear from our friends at the University of Texas. And if you could talk a bit about the work you've done and answer the questions around just your research experience and some major findings in just a few minutes. That would be beautiful. So I'll pass it to you.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, this is Nick, University of Texas Pro Bono Program, working underneath Andrea Marsh. So we got a great list of questions to work on related to money bail and pretrial services generally, because in addition to asking incarcerating people for not being able to afford, sometimes they'll release people and have a bunch of requirements that they take drug tests and report, and different ways of kind of keeping people restricted even after releasing them. And so There's a lot of movement actually in Virginia. We're looking at Richmond and Henrico County. There's a lot of movement there now in the state. The DA for Richmond decided to not pursue cash bail, which is on the face of it good news. However, we wonder if they, instead of pursuing cash bail, are just simply asking to hold people instead. The Virginia State Crime Commission is a state, centered department that is going to be releasing an extensive study about pretrial detention and services in Virginia. So the legislature is at least thinking about it. The conversation is mostly about the disparate impact on indigent people. Unfortunately, they're not talking about the disparate racial impacts that are taking place for pretrial. Even the Virginia Attorney General released a memo supporting reform. So it seems like there's people, at least some kind of movement to get rid of cash bail. However, I think like Jade mentioned, the movement is kind of asking for replacing cash bail with this assessment tool called the VPRAI. And the real concern is that, so essentially what this tool does is, instead of, it looks at a variety of factors, maybe it's a criminal history, things like that, in determining if someone is a flight risk. And unfortunately, we're concerned that instead of not releasing people for money bail, that it's just presumably going to detain people entirely, saying that they're a possible flight risk. So we're not totally sure based on the evidence and the data if it has any decarceral impact. And so hopefully when the Virginia State Crime Commission comes out with their data, we'll be able to see if that tool has a decarceral impact. Like Jade said, it is kind of like trying to pull the veil back on it, because it's this kind of black box. But three things we did find, the kind of biggest players when it comes to pretrial services are the judicial system, trying to suss out magistrates and judges. They have a large impact in what the restrictions are for people being released before their trial. There's also the prosecutor's office, and there's also really the public defender's office, or any kind of indigent defense system has a large say in who stays and who doesn't. So I think, like Jed said, you could definitely pressure magistrates and judges to not pursue cash bail and to have a presumption in favor of release. They do have guidelines from the state, but they do have a lot of leeway in their own right in being able to release people. There is a judge in Northern Virginia actually who decided on their own to no longer pursue cash bail. So that's some movement. They can also pressure district attorney's office. Like I said, the DA for Richmond decided to not pursue cash bail, but I think the Henrico County DA should also follow suit. And then, of course, I had a chance to talk with the Indigent Defense Commission policy analyst, and he mentioned that Henrico County doesn't have a public defender's office, while Richmond does. And so when you have someone who can at least be there on your behalf for a pretrial hearing or an arraignment, you're more likely to have someone fighting on your side. And so those are the kinds of big picture things that we found. But we're hoping to get more data on what the impacts are of this new tool. And but at least the legislature's thinking and talking about it on a statewide thing. But yeah, so that's kind of big picture what we found.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. We really appreciate that. It's been beautiful work. So now we'll pass it to Arissa to talk us about the work that National Bailout Collective has been doing and some of their research questions, or our research questions.
Our research questions. Hey, hey y'all. So the National Bailout is a collective of Black organizers that formed in May 2017 following our inaugural Black Women's Bailout that the lovely Mary Huckstrom song offered us in January 2017. We currently consist, and we are similarly to Song and the other organizations that are part of our collective, are committed to building the community-based movements and pretrial detention and ultimately mass incarceration. in obviously money bail. But as what was just previously mentioned, what we've been seeing and doing this work for the past 2 years, as we have been organizing around Indian money bail, and that has been our rallying cry. There has been a movement to end money bail, and a sort of like co-optation of that rallying cry, and it's been replaced with risk assessments and electronic monitoring and other harmful practices that don't do us any good. So really want to be clear about that being our goal, the abolition of pretrial detention and mass incarceration. We currently consist of 14 organizations, mostly regional base building groups, and about 4 national organizations, all of which specialize in everywhere from communication to cultural change and policy reform to grassroots organizing. The groups that currently make up our organizations are SONG, Texas Organizing Project, TOPS, which is the Ordinary People Society, Color Change, Law for Black Lives, BLM Memphis, Philly Community Bell Fund, LA Kin, Dignity and Power Now, and some others, SC Justice Group as well, based out in Oakland, California. We have about 3 priorities coming into our new year as a collective. And those priorities are to continue to do Black Mamas Bailout. So really freeing Black mothers and caregivers every Mother's Day as we started to build an infrastructure to support those mamas that we bail out and the other folks that we bailed out. Just as Jade mentioned, we have collaborated with SONG to do numerous bailouts such as Black August, Father's Day, Juneteenth, and others. And collectively, we have bailed out over 300 folks. So we want to make sure that we're building the infrastructure to support those folks when they get home, and to build a political community for those folks to organize as they will be best positioned to end these systems in which they find themselves in. And part of that is we just launched a fellowship that about 20 mamas completed in September of this year, which consisted of political education and relationship building and skill training. And we also want to just serve as leaders in this conversation about bail reform, hopefully that to not be co-opted, and also for us to produce all the brilliance that we have as a collective of Black organizers, particularly through reports, model legislation, webinars, and all the things. And one of our goals being to establish the national bailout and other Black groups across the country, organizing around abolishing money bail as thought leaders. And we're doing that currently with a big Black ass bail report that we hope to be released in April. Yes, Arca, in April, we hope for this to be released. So we have been working with the clinical cohorts to get us on the ground. We're currently in the research stage of our report. And we hope that this report will tell our stories. As I mentioned, we built out over 300 people collectively. We've identified the needs of those we built out. We created support systems. We've been doing all of those things. So now we want to take this time to tell our stories, to summarize the lessons that we've learned together, what we've seen, what we believe, and also to assert our politics and our policies and our recommendations based on all the work that we've done, and to analyze our bailouts. And yeah, so we have the students in the clinical cohort have been conducting research for us, specifically deep dives into recent reforms. So a lot of the organizing that we've done, especially when things have started in Black Mamas Bailout, started a lot of like organizing campaigns. So just the cohort was able to do a deep dive into like recent reforms that came as results of our organizing or other organizing across the country, to give more information about what was going well, what wasn't, and how those things were happening, and also to give us a deeper analysis into like a national landscape of what was happening to further inform our report. So that is what is going down.
Thank you so much, Arista. Beautiful work. So grateful for the work of National Bella Collective and Song, leading us in the Money Bill and Free Child Detention. As we wrap up the bill working group, I just want to shout out a couple of the clinics who couldn't be on the call. So there's Northwestern, Howard, Yale, the University of North Carolina, the University of Wisconsin, and then also our friend Natalia from Buffalo also did some work with us. So I want to shout her out. And then we also had students from the University of Washington School of Law Clinic work on answering our question around needs assessment. And just for folks who don't know, when we see bail reform throughout the country, it usually comes along with risk assessment, and our people were like, risk assessments won't work. It's not working for our people. And so organizers have gotten together and said what we actually want is needs assessment. And so we're working with the University of Washington School of Law to figure out what that looks like. And so that concludes our report backs. And so I can just say that we have done some very beautiful and amazing work together this past semester. Yes, thank you. Y'all are amazing. So shout out to the clinics, shout out to the partners who've been throwing down with us, both in the spring of 2018 and then wrapping up our the year with us in the fall of 2018. And so what I'll do, because we're about 2 minutes over, is close us out. Unless folks, we can maybe, I want to spend maybe about 3 or 4 minutes for questions if folks have questions. If folks have any questions? No? All right.
This is Dara. I don't have any questions, but I didn't get we moved so fast. I put it in the chat box. I didn't get a chance to say thank you to all the great work from the students, from the professors, the clinic directors, and to Law for Black Lives. So I didn't get a chance to say thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you as well.
Thank y'all. Yeah, thank you. We had an amazing semester and like continue to learn and grow. And excited to be digging in spring of 2019 to answer more questions and to resource and give more tools to people on the ground who are engaged in very powerful and meaningful work every day. So just a few announcements. Let's see. So for our friends who are involved in the clinic, you'll be getting an assessment and invitation to get some swag. So I want to thank you for the work you've done with us. So Law for Black Lives is like, hey, we got shirts, we got tote bags we want to give you. And then also for folks who are like not in our clinic, but want to be in our clinic, I'll put it in the chat box, but you can complete this form, this interest form. If you do, and I think we want them due by December 14th, complete the form and we'll hit you up to set up a call to talk about how we can work together next semester. And then for folks who are like community partners or interested in being one of our community or movement partners, you'll see in the newsletter this week a form that you can fill out to let us know what your legal resources are, and we can figure out how we can work together with our clinics to meet those needs. But so grateful for y'all, for your work, for you spending your Tuesday evening with us to learn about what the clinics have been up to this past semester and hear from our community partners about how they're gonna like use the work to sustain and continue to enhance the work they're doing on the ground. So much love and gratitude to y'all. All right, peace.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.